Personally, what I envision is creating a small fusion energy research and development laboratory here in Minnesota, just west of Minneapolis, that would engineer, build, test, and later optimize my fusion power plant designs. At this time, I'm not hiring. However, if someday you would like to be part of my team, then please email me and let me know of your interest. If I had the money today, I would start hiring key people tomorrow. Then, when my fusion power plant designs are ready, they will be licensed to a few of the energy companies that will be interested in manufacturing them. I have a very fast timeline. Here's the timeline I envision. Later, I will show you this timeline with the regulatory process added onto it. It is shocking. The dilemma we face will be very clear. Personally, I would love to go over all of the details of my fusion laboratory plans. However, that doesn't make sense. Not in this movie. Still, I would like you to have a feel for what I envision. First, notice how this is only a 3-year timeline. It is a very fast timeline. In line 1, I have build lab in phases. There are specific experiments and fusion power plant designs that will be built over the 3-year period. Each key experiment will have its own room. Because separate rooms are needed, the lab can be built in stages. In essence, over the 3-year period, the lab construction will be non-stop. In the first 6 months, a wide variety of details would take place in order to get the organization going. Each proof of physics experiment will be set up in a demonstration room. This room would be used to demonstrate and teach basic concepts for staff and visitors. Initial engineering experiments would be performed. Equipment and parts would be purchased. Key custom parts would be fabricated. This would include copper spheres and hemispheric coils. In the second line, I have proof of physics experiments. In essence, my lab will be constantly performing experiments like these. Each experiment of this type is used to prove and demonstrate a fundamental concept of physics. The central system for my fusion designs must be built. It is the ignition system. It will use a spherical laser system. Fusion researchers have been building these for years in their inertial confinement systems. Next, a confinement system will be built. It will be used with the ignition system to demonstrate extended burn times. Next, a variety of tests and experiments will be performed to integrate the ignition system with the confinement system. Next, a superconducting energy storage ring would be purchased. Work would be started on building the transfer system around this key component. Next, 2 key experiments would be started. Using an upgraded confinement system, long duration burns would be demonstrated. Then an experiment would be performed to demonstrate breakeven. In the third line, I have proof of concept experiments. Each experiment of this type is used to prove and demonstrate the engineering for these fusion power plant designs. During this time period, the major construction lab would be completed. Using an upgraded confinement system, 1 experiment will demonstrate long duration fusion burn times. The third major system for these designs would be built and tested. I refer to it as the transfer circuit. This will involve some fancy electrical engineering. This circuit will transfer the electricity produced from the core of the power plant to the electrical grid. Next, a series of experiments will be performed with the goal of producing as much electricity as is consumed. Fusion researchers refer to this milestone as breakeven. In the fourth line, I have fusion power plants. The goal is to build working fusion power plants. I plan on building at least 6 during this time frame. The first will test burn times and extended burn times. The second will test long duration burn times. The third will attempt break-even. Each of the first 3 test platforms will not be complete commercial fusion power plants. Think of them as scientific and engineering tests. To reach the goal of building working fusion power plants, I plan on building 3 demonstration power plants. Fusion researchers refer to this type of device as a demo power plant. The initial construction of these devices will start at about the 18-month point. Each of the demonstration power plants will use conducting spheres. Each will have one core. The diameters will be 1 meter, 2 meters, and 5 meters. Therefore, I refer to them as Demo 1, Demo 2, and Demo 5. Each demonstration fusion power plant will have its own dedicated lab room set off from the main lab. The construction of these rooms can take place when earlier work is being performed. This will help with the tight schedule. Then, the actual devices will be built in each dedicated room. Again, they are the 1 meter demo fusion power plant, the 2 meter demo fusion power plant, and the 5 meter demo fusion power plant. I understand some people will want to analyze the details of this plan. This is not the purpose here. What everyone must look at now is the overall idea and the vision. Everyone needs to see the big picture. If I can get funding to do this, then I can afford to hire the people that will work out the construction timeline and details, the critical path, and all the details some people are curious about. Again, this is a very fast timeline. The result of this fast timeline is we could have working fusion power plants in only 3 years. Imagine that. We could have working fusion power plants in only 3 years. Actually, with enough funding, I should be able to have them working in my lab in about 2 years. Seriously, these designs are not that big or complicated. I could spend hours giving a presentation on the details and merits of my plan. We could spend weeks analyzing these details. For most people, that would be boring. This is not what we need to do now. Not here in this film. What is important now in this film is for me to share with you the big picture. To summarize, by first understanding time, I was able to create a grand unification theory for physics. This enabled me to create a brand new way of creating fusion energy. Keep in mind, the key breakthrough with time involves a definition. This part on time is right. There is no doubt about it. Actually, because it is a definition, it cannot be wrong. Part of my new physics is theory. Of course, any theory could be right or wrong. So far, inexpensive experiments dramatically support the theoretical portion of this new physics. Obviously, it makes sense to follow up with expensive experiments. With regard to my fusion power plant designs, there are 2 aspects that need to be tested: physics and engineering. Obviously, it makes sense to test both. To do this will be expensive. However, keep in mind, if these fusion power plants will work, then this is what will enable a wonderful vision for the future of the world. Obviously, it makes sense to test these fusion power plant designs. Now, you need to decide some things for yourself. Begin by watching this film. That is your first step. Then, without regard to what anyone else thinks, you need to decide your course of action. Just ask yourself these questions. First, does my description for time make sense to you? Second, is my story compelling? Third, is this a good vision for the world? Fourth, should the United States help me pursue my vision? Fifth, do you want to help or be involved in some way? If you think my explanation of time makes sense to you, then do not worry what other people might say about the rest of my new physics. Really, you don't need to understand anything else. My theoretical physics doesn't matter. My astrophysics doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. All that matters is if you understand and like my explanation of time, if you agree that I have made a major breakthrough and I have solved the mystery of time, then that should be all that is needed to establish my credentials, at least in your eyes. With respect to time, you don't need to wait for some famous physicist to say I'm right. Understanding time does not require a PhD in physics or in some other area of science. You don't need to rely on a physicist to tell you I am right about time. Again, think about the questions and decide for yourself. If you think my overall story sounds compelling, then I hope you will get involved in some way. If you like my vision for changing the world, if you want to see it happen, then I hope you might feel compelled to help me in some way. If you think the United States should help fund my fusion energy lab and should support my goal to having working fusion power plants in 3 years, then this requires you to be involved politically. The bare minimum of politics requires that you need to talk about this with the people that you know. Better yet, also talk about this with your local politicians. If you like my vision, may I ask you to add, oh, by the way, I like John Nordberg's vision for having fusion energy in only 3 years. If they have heard about me, then great. If they haven't, but sound interested, maybe you could tell them how they could find this science film online and recommend that they watch it. Again, at its heart, this film is a proposal from me to you. If you like these ideas, then you need to decide how much you want to get involved. Personally, I feel this is all very important. My concern is, how can I, all by myself, elevate this above the noise of superficial entertainment? Personally, right now, my biggest job is to get funding for my fusion energy lab. I need to raise millions of dollars. There are 3 groups that still need more information. They are the venture capitalists, the owners and top executives at energy companies, and the politicians. They need to know more because for them, millions, billions, and trillions of dollars are at stake. If you do not fall into one of these 3 categories, then I can understand why you might want to skip ahead to the last part of this film, the part called Part 6, My Vision, Getting Water and Helping the Environment.